Yes.
about. Ready?
Good.
Kelly can go first.
Not exactly sure where the city manager is, but we're going to go ahead and start.
Kelly's first.
And go ahead and call to order this Kerrville City Council workshop for December 9th, 2025. Do we have anybody signed up to speak?
No, sir.
All right. Move right into 2A. Who's going to start us? Elaine, are you starting us?
But I'd really like Kelly to put
Kelly, would you
together
like-
a really great presentation, so.
Hagemeyer, would you care to start?
I'll start. Hello, Council. I'm excited to come to you today to announce that the City of Kerrville was approved for a cultural district designation by the Texas Commission of the Arts. So thank you so much for Delane Siegerman, Catherine Boyette, and Howard Taylor, and the Main Street Board for pushing that forward and seeing a vested interest in us pursuing this designation. So in 2005, the legislature put forward a cultural designation program through the Texas Arts Commission to stimulate economic development, community vitality, using it as a focal point for generating business, attracting tourists, stimulating cultural development, and fostering civic pride. There are only 57 designations in Texas, and Kerrville is now one of them. So just some of the goals: attracting artists, encouraging business, addressing any hurdles that the community may have, establishing your cultural district as a tourist destination, preserving and reusing historic buildings, enhancing property values, and fostering local cultural development. So the cultural district management entity, which is now the City of Kerrville, is the primary liaison between the district and the Texas Commission of the Arts. So our responsibility is to send in project applications, to submit an annual report. Every 10 years, we will have to be recertified, and then if there are any changes that are needed to the district. There are 3 major grant opportunities that we're looking at. There's the Arts Respond, which is for projects that are specifically between April 1 and August 31st of that year. And this is more program-based. We have the Cultural District application, which is much larger. It's more about supporting the cultural district as a whole. And then Arts Create, which is every other year on odd number years, and this is more about operational support. So the largest one being the Cultural District Grant, that's due on June 15th of every year. So you were looking at high quality arts programming and bringing in visitors from more than 50 miles away, enhancements of the cultural district to make it more accessible and attractive, signage, wayfinding. I know that that's something that we've had a lot of discussions on in Main Street, promoting the district by website, branding, and marketing, which was a large part of a conversation that we've had, organizational support with management and operations, and also capital improvements or acquisitions can be included in that grant because the maximum is $250,000. So as I said, it's this one is an annual grant, a minimum of $3,000. All of these grants are one-to-one, so it is really important for us to work with our nonprofit partners and our arts partners in these applications. And then, once again, not to exceed $250,000. So this is kind of the timeline of which we've worked through right now. So November of last year, A resolution was approved for us to submit for the application. Then in September, Kerrville was approved by TCA, and now today we are coming to you with a resolution to create the Cultural Arts District Advisory Board. So the board responsibilities, guidelines and standards, improving arts community communication, promoting the arts, advising the city council on various projects, recommending policies and programs, connecting with local, regional, and national organizations, pursuing funding, including gifts and grants, and reporting annually to the council. The advisory board, as it is in the packet, in the resolution, is it's comprised of property and business owners that are within the boundaries, those of vested interest in the cultural arts, residing in Kerr County, and it is a 2-year term. So the cultural district, as we submitted it to TCA, is the downtown core from the 2050 comprehensive plan. We're also going to, today, y'all will also be approving the bylaws. So here, the mission and vision, once again, going back to the purpose of the cultural district and stimulating economic development and community vitality, and creating a partnership between the businesses, residents, and the city in moving forward with arts education, cultural tourism, and artistic sustainability. Also within the bylaws, we discuss the objectives of being a cohesive unit, economic growth, generating business, and identifying any market needs. Membership and officers, so there will be a chairperson, a vice chair. The secretary will be the city secretary or any designee, a staff liaison, and also ex officio members, including the HDBA, Historic Downtown Business Alliance, and a representative from TERS number 1, since the district is within the TERS. Can I answer any questions?
I would like to add just a few things. Thank you, Kelly. You did a great job. First of all, we had our first unofficial meeting of these board members yesterday. We have 12, which I'll get to possibly some suggestions on amending the resolution a little bit about the number of members, because it says 7 in that, and we have more than that. But we met unofficially yesterday and have already started working on a possible project for the first grant, which is due January 15th, right around the corner. We signed a team of people out of those members yesterday to get some bids on some things that would pertain to the application that we're going to apply for. And let's see, what else? We are working very closely with the CVB because, in fact, Julie Davis was in the meeting with us yesterday. A lot of what I think we will do will possibly overlap a little bit with their efforts, so we want to make sure that we're communicating and understanding what each person and party is doing, and actually, you know, it'll enhance our ability to do things, to work together. The other thing I want to say is we possibly, when we submit this first grant application, excuse me, we will probably ask for a map amendment because we believe there's a few of our venues that are not included in the one that was submitted to TCA. However, I've been told that's not a big deal as long as you don't make it the entire state of Texas or, you know, a much, much larger one than we submitted. We're just tweaking it a little bit since when we put the application in back in April, we used a map that wasn't as, you know, like it didn't include Callow, for instance, and Callow was definitely in our narrative for our venue as one of our cultural benefits. So those are the things I wanted to just mention, and at whatever time is appropriate, I'll mention who the board members will be. So, any questions?
Do you have a map of the area?
It's Yes, I'm not sure if it's with it's with the resolution that we have. I do. I have all 6 maps that seem to float around, thank you, pertaining to whatever issue we're talking about. This is one, and we have a core district, a cultural district one that's somewhat different. This goes from Washington to Shiner, so as you can see, it does not go to Jefferson.
Okay.
And, it does not go to North Street, basically, or even to Tybee. So that eastern border street, Tybee, if we could just go a little further east and a little further north, that'll include Callow Theater, which is really important, so.
Okay.
We were, after the application, first of all, it is basically unheard of to receive this designation with a first-time applicant. So we were really excited and surprised that we were chosen. So after looking at this and then looking at the 2050 plan, we have the downtown DAC, downtown arts, and so we said we should probably have it better match what was in the 2050 plan. And so we intend to make that amendment. So it will be a little bit larger than this. But there are a couple of buildings that are now zoned differently within the DAC that have been having some hurdles finding some tenants just because of what it had been a building of some sort, maybe for a newspaper for many years. And because of its layout, there are certain types of businesses that it melds well with, but it doesn't fit the zoning.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that they're included so that they can receive benefits.
It's real exciting. This is a new adventure.
Yeah.
So we're kind of getting our feet wet as we go along, but we've got a lot of help, got a great staff. I know we'll cross all our T's and dot all our I's and make sure we're doing everything, as we should. Let the checks roll in. That's what I say.
Any other questions for Councilmember Sigerman or Ms. Hagemeyer?
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you for your hard work.
And by the way, that $250,000, that's really a $500,000 project.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's something to think about, like for capital improvements.
All right, our next item is 2B. Mr. Barron?
Well, we got maybe a change of pace here for you, and if we can take 2B out of order. Our consultant's not here yet. He was actually flew in from San Antonio, and I haven't heard from him since he left to get to the airport, so.
That's not acceptable. We're going to go with 2B. No, just kidding.
Okay, it'll be short.
Short's good. That's not a
I don't know that I
negative.
can answer all the questions, but I will muddle through it. If you don't mind, we'll take it out of order, just to give him a little while longer.
Sure. 2C then, Mr. Barron.
This one I was actually saving the best for last, so this is a presentation that I'm really excited to give y'all tonight. Since I've been here 21 years, they've been tasking me with finding new water for the city. And in 2018, we even hired HDR to go help us go out and find, is there any water that's affordable, reliable, and that we can go after that makes sense for our city. And you've probably seen that report, and there's not a lot. There's almost no water out there that's available, especially during the times of drought. In the last year or so, we've actually found a little bit more, found an idea that might work for y'all, and so we want to present that to you tonight. So, out of that 2018 report, the 2 scenarios that we have been able to achieve so far are additional conservation and also another groundwater well here in the city that we partnered up with Headwaters on. And so that's actually firmed up our water supply for both of those 2. Tonight, we're going to talk about 4 more options that we may have if y'all would like to pursue additional new water for the city. The first one's going to be evaluating kind of a remote well field, the cost and operation of what that might look like to build it or to get all the permitting we need and build and own and operate that. We're going to talk about indirect reuse. We're going to talk about direct reuse. And then we'll also talk we'll kind of compare that to a deeper well in the city And so those are the different four. The deeper well in the city, we're just gonna look at the cost of that because it doesn't have all the overlying costs that the other three projects have. So HDR is here to do that presentation for us. I will give one more introductory piece is this reuse water. You see two of these scenarios that we're going to talk about tonight are dealing with reuse water. In my opinion, I think that's probably the most reliable water we have because the city already owns it. And as long as we're generating water, we're going to have reuse water. And so we're going to explore two options that look at different ways that we'll be able to take that reuse water and do something with it in a way that hopefully is allow us to take another bite at the apple of using that water again. The reason that's so important that this comes to council now is because we do have other subdivisions coming to town that are also interested in that reuse water for their own uses. And it's just a good time for us to kind of take a pulse as to what are we going to do with our reuse system in the near future. So with that, I'll introduce Zachary Stein and Charlie, tell me your last name. Burton? They're here to do the presentation and present to you what their findings for this study. So come on up, Zachary.
Please. As long as there's not a test later.
Thank you. See you. Thank you.
So Mayor, Council, we appreciate the opportunity to come speak to you today, talk about our analysis and what we found, and hopefully provide some interesting information for you to make a decision moving forward on the next water supply for the city. So with that, quick agenda of what we're going to talk about. I'll give a little bit of background. Stuart provided some. I'll add a little detail to that. Charlie's going to walk through our strategy updates, so the analysis that we did. And then I'll come back and wrap it up with a summary comparison and then, of course, answer any questions or provide any more discussion on topics that we presented. So with that, a little background. As Stuart mentioned, in 2018, HDR helped the city complete a long-range water supply plan. This plan looked 30 years and really even 100 years out into the future. It looked at what we think the city's water demands will grow out into the future and that need moving out in the future. It evaluated the reliability of existing supplies, and then comparing those, it determined that future needs. So if you look at that chart on the right, what you'll see is an orange line, and that's the projected demands that we came up with as part of the plan. And then the shaded areas are your three different current sources. So groundwater supply, surface water, and ASR supply, which we really consider one supply source, and then a non-potable reuse supply, of course, your reuse pond that you have now that you use to supply golf courses, soccer fields, etc.
May I ask a question while we're on?
Sure.
Because we get most of our water now, don't we, from the surface?
We get about 80. Currently we run about 80 to 90% surface water. But we have a groundwater permit big enough to carry us during times of drought.
Right, so this isn't our current usage in this ratio, this is
So you're leading me right into my next point.
Right,
Perfect segue.
But the graph makes you
Yeah.
think that we're relying on groundwater. And we're
So what you're seeing on there is what the city sources would look like under severe drought conditions.
okay.
So even as bad as it's been in the last few years, it hasn't been anything what it was really like in the 1950s when we saw that really, really severe drought stretch where during that period, there would be very little surface water available and you'd be relying very heavily on your existing groundwater permits. And then, of course, your reuse supply would also be there because it's a very reliable drought supply. You know, if you're using water, you're going to have reuse. And so that's why that looks much different. But thank you for the great lead into that point. And as you mentioned, yeah, in an average to wet year, that light blue covers up most of that whole area, right? And in an average to wet year, even non-severe drought year, you don't see that gap between the projected demands and the supplies, right? You have enough existing supply to cover those demands. It's just in that severe drought, when you're really limited on the amount of surface water you have, you're really stretching that groundwater to meet everything that you need. And so from the plan, we identified and evaluated 12 strategies. We did this through a stakeholder process, uncovered every stone, looked at a lot of different things, and ultimately recommended 5 strategies for the city to pursue. As Stuart mentioned, the city has continued the additional conservation and also installed the Ellenberger well. So if you look on that chart now, that green shaded area is that Ellenberger well, which provides a good amount of supply. It meets that drought, very severe drought need moving out a couple decades out into the future. With that, though, the need to start planning for the next supply is really now, because it does take a lot of time to bring that next one on. So with that forethought in mind, the city has asked us to update 3 of those strategies with new information that's become available in the last 7 or 8 years. Oh, sorry, I had one more slide in there just talking about the different implementation that the city has done since the plan. So I think that's groundbreaking from the new Ellenberger well there.
Who's the one in the middle there? That's what I want to know.
Well, you know, this is like a blast from the past. Past pictures, and who is that? And
Every photo is dated for 2020, right, by the
right.
by the mass. So with that new information that's come available, the primary piece of that is the city has gone out and taken the recommendations from the plan and done 2 test wells at a northern site for a remote well field. So we took that information to update our well yields for that remote site, along with updated cost estimates and updated supply reliability and permitting and implementation requirements that would be required for 3 new strategies, or update of 3 of those strategies, which is the remote well field, additional indirect reuse, and then direct reuse. So as Stuart mentioned, those are the 3 we looked at, and now Charlie's going to come dive into the details of each of those 3 strategies. So I'll turn it over to her.
All right, moving into strategy evaluations. The 3 strategies we evaluated were evaluated through these 5 categories. Supply was the first one. We looked at the reliable annual supply, or firm yield, and so that was focused on the reliable supply through a drought of record, and that would be available for a long-term period, like 30 to 50 years. And then we looked at total project cost, annual cost, and unit cost. Those are planning level cost estimates. We developed these costs as more of a comparison to have all strategies on an equal evaluation. And if the city was to move forward with one of these strategies, the cost would be refined further. And then the last category was permitting and implementation effort. We looked at the level of effort that would be necessary to obtain permits, any environmental permitting, water rights necessary, and then additional infrastructure or efforts to integrate a new strategy into the existing water supply system, and then as well potential or the expected political and public support for these strategies. Getting into our first strategy, the remote well field. We evaluated a remote well field at a location north of the city, and this remote well field would be in the Ellenberger Formation. And for the strategy to supply 1 MGD of groundwater, it would require 4,563 acres of contiguous groundwater leases, and an operating permit would be required from the Headwaters Groundwater Conservation. And so the infrastructure for this strategy there would be 4 active wells and 1 contingency well on the property evaluated, and there would be a 6.1 mile, 8-inch diameter transmission pipeline to connect the remote well field to the existing distribution system. And we wanted to note that the production volumes are estimated based on the recent test wells, and there's lower certainty compared to the production wells that are located in the city that are existing and known already.
Could I ask a question before you move on? How many owners in that 4,563 acres approximately do you think there might be? 100, 50, 20?
So we didn't get into that level of
Okay.
detail.
Yes.
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 I wish it's 2, but I'm sure it's not.
Won't be.
We'll see how much it costs without that.
Right. And summarizing our strategy evaluation criteria, the supply would be 1 MGD of a reliable annual supply. It would have a total project cost of $69.5 million. The majority of that total project cost would be attributed to acquiring the 4,500 acres of groundwater leases. And so the annual cost for this project would be $5.3 million, and there'd be a unit cost of $4,707 per acre foot per year. And the permitting and implementation effort for this strategy was identified as high, and that is attributed to the significant number of groundwater leases that would be required for this strategy. Moving into the direct potable reuse strategy, this strategy would treat wastewater effluent. They would use advanced treatment and reverse osmosis to treat that to a drinking water level quality. There would be evaporation ponds required to dispose of the reverse osmosis brine. And we also costed an ASR well that could store excess supply from the advanced water treatment facility. That supply could be used, it could be stored and used for system operational flexibility and reliability, and an additional supply during drought times. And so the required infrastructure for the strategy, there would be pre- and post-treatment upgrades required at the existing wastewater treatment facility, an advanced water treatment facility with reverse osmosis treatment technology would be necessary, and then 2 brine evaporation ponds and an ASR well. So looking at our strategy categories, it's assumed that half an MGD would be available based on the existing available reuse supply. And the total project cost would be $16.2 million with an annual cost of $2.7 million and a unit cost of $4,739 per acre foot. The permitting and implementation effort is expected to be high for this strategy. Permitting efforts would require close coordination with the TCEQ, a pilot treatment process for the advanced water treatment facility, as well as TCEQ permitting for the ASR well, if the supply for the ASR well was to be the treated wastewater effluent. And implementation is expected to be high. There is public opposition is common with these strategies, and so there would be some city outreach, educational efforts that would be necessary to successfully implement this strategy.
I've got questions. What other cities, because I know we've all been to Houston or somewhere and probably drank reused water or potable water. Can you name some of those just for the public so they can say, oh, I've been there and I probably drank the same thing? Because that is, Stuart, you know, the term that everybody hates.
Better than I do, but you keep pointing at me, so.
No, I'm sorry, I'm just pointing.
So,
Guilty?
Direct potable is not used very often. Direct potable is where it comes out of the wastewater treatment plant, goes directly into a water treatment plant, and stays in the same pipe and goes back to the home. Or goes into your potable water side and goes back to it. There's not very many of those in the United States yet. El Paso is just starting theirs right now. They're doing the pilot work, I believe, on it, and they've actually started some of the construction of it. Now, indirect that we're going to talk about next, there's a lot of that gets used in the state of Texas. I'll let I'll let her tell more about the strategy, and then I'll tell you about how many times the Trinity River in East Texas is used by the time it gets from Dallas to Houston. About 7 times it gets used before it makes it all the way to Houston. So that is a lot more reasonable, and you'll see cost-friendly method for doing this, so.
And you did say that ASRs were required or are optional?
Just an optional
Okay.
way to store excess supply.
Okay, I will, wait till you finish to ask anything else.
Alright, and now looking at our indirect potable reuse strategy. This strategy would take the reclaimed water from the existing reuse pond and deliver it to the existing water treatment plant. We evaluated 2 routes for this strategy, and both routes use portions of existing reuse pipelines to deliver the reuse water. And so this strategy would require an amendment to the wastewater treatment plant discharge permit. An additional outfall would need to be added to the permit, and a water right bed and banks permit is recommended for this strategy. Moving into our north route, the north route to Elm Creek option would use the existing reuse pipeline that currently delivers water to the Kerrville soccer fields. And from there, 1.6 miles of new pipeline would take a half MGD of the reuse water and deliver it to Elm Creek, where it would then be discharged and conveyed to Nimitz Lake and eventually diverted and picked up at the water treatment plant. So this total project cost would be $3.1 million and an annual cost of $253,000 with a unit cost of $452 per acre foot. The permitting and implementation efforts are anticipated to be low for this effort. The 2 permits I mentioned previously are expected to be easy to obtain. And the implementation efforts, this strategy uses a majority of existing pipeline with only 1.6 miles of new infrastructure needed. And in addition, this strategy, it discharges to a creek, and so that can contribute to natural enhancement of stream flows in the community. So looking at this south route, the south route uses the existing reuse pipeline that delivers water to the River Hills Golf Course. And from there, 4.1 miles of new pipeline would be required to convey the water just upstream of the water treatment plant at Nimitz Lake. And so this strategy would also supply 560 acre feet per year, or half an MGD. The total project cost would be $7.6 million with an annual cost of $614,000 and then a unit cost of $1,096 per acre foot per year. Same permitting and implementation effort expected. Permits are expected to be easy to acquire. This route does require additional new infrastructure compared to the north route, and land acquisition or right-of-way acquisition would be expected to put this pipeline in.
Excuse me.
I'm gonna back over to Zach.
So when we roll up all of the supplies, costs, unit costs, and permanent implementation efforts that Charlie walked through, in one table, you can start to see where the differences occur and where different strategies sort of separate themselves from the other. So you'll notice that the remote well field and direct potable reuse strategies have a rather much higher total project cost compared to the indirect reuse strategies, and also a much higher permitting and implementation effort. And really the apples to apples comparison is the best one we can provide there is that unit cost. And so as Charlie mentioned, costs are based on a very conceptual level of design, but yet you can see there's a pretty large difference between those first 3 strategies and the indirect reuse strategies, just because of the less onerous need for treatment, leases, permitting, et cetera, and infrastructure. So Also showed on there is the new local Ellenberger well that Stuart mentioned. As he mentioned, this well does not provide a new supply, but rather increases the reliability of the existing groundwater permit that the city has, which is, I believe, up to 4 MGD, roughly, I think. So making that 4 MGD more reliable, but not really producing a new water source that the city would be bringing into its distribution system. So with that, quick summary of the strategies. Remote well field, key takeaways that we gathered from that was it's going to require a substantial amount of groundwater leases to produce that water, and those are going to be very challenging to obtain. Mainly, and one of those reasons is they need to be contiguous. It can't be pieces here and there or pieces all around the county. It's got to be all around that well field. It does have a high drought reliability, but there is some risk with further out in the future, long-term droughts, reducing water tables, others starting to pump that area of the aquifer as well. So there is some risk associated with that supply in the reliability category. On the direct potable reuse supply, that's going to be your highest drought reliable supply. You never let it hit the stream again, so you keep it in your system the whole time. However, there is the potential for public opposition, and of course the challenges with treating and disposal of that brine reject. And then finally, the indirect potable reuse strategy, also a very high drought reliability, lowest cost option of the ones that we evaluated, and also presents the least challenges with regards to permitting, implementation, and operations, as Charlie walked through. So with that, I know that was a very quick summary of our evaluation, but very happy to answer any questions, discuss anything more.
I just, under the indirect potable reuse, what is a bed and banks permit? And if it's recommended but not required, why would it be better to, I mean, if it's recommended, I would think that we should do it because there's obviously an advantage to
Sure.
to doing it as to not doing it. So explain that to me, please.
Sure. So we're going to talk a little bit about water rights and prior appropriations, and that's why it's recommended but not required. So
Okay.
the city can technically discharge that into the river and pick it up with their existing water treatment plant. However, without a bed and banks permit, when that water is discharged, it becomes water of the state. As soon as it hits a natural channel of any sort, it becomes state water, and it is available to the city under their existing permits.
Okay.
Now, your existing permits have priority dates, and so that water that is discharged, the indirect reuse water, is subject to senior calls from downstream water rights. So in a severe drought, someone else with the more senior water right could call on that water.
Okay.
What a bed and banks permit does is it tags that water as the city's.
Yeah.
Even after it's discharged into the natural channel, it is still the city's.
Okay.
And so they would be able to divert that water then under the bed and banks permit and not under your existing permits.
Okay.
So it doesn't count towards your existing permit limits either.
Okay.
The caveat with that is there may be in-stream flow requirements associated with that if you do get a bed and banks permit. So you may, during severe drought conditions, have to let a little bit of it go by just to satisfy environmental concerns downstream.
Okay. Thank you.
Ethan?
So, the new local Ellenberger well won't provide any new water, but I understand that the geologist at the headwaters has found water below the Ellenberger, and so we're not considering that as a possibility.
Well, they say that there might be water down there. They've proven to be right on everything that they said might happen. But the groundwater district does not slate what aquifer you're pulling out of. They said for every surface acre you have, you get 80,000 gallons of groundwater. They haven't gone into the explanation of if you're in the middle Trinity, you get this, the lower Trinity, you get this, the Ellenberger, you get that, and anything down below. It's just, as it is, as the rules are today, it's 80,000 gallons per surface acre. They don't care what aquifer you get it out of.
But that, with proper documentation, they might be persuaded to change it.
Anything
I
could
mean, I don't,
happen.
yeah, but
yes.
I mean, there would be some logic to that, not that they would do it, but I mean, still there would be some logic to that.
It depends. So if they'd have to get some geologists involved, and if, as the upper aquifers, if they drain into the lower one, arguably it's all the same aquifer. It depends on how confined they are. And as the lower you pull it out, the more people it affects in the higher aquifers, and so the groundwater district really doesn't want to do that either. And so it's a thing that would need to be fleshed out. Not to say that a deeper well wouldn't help us. I mean, it would help us in a time of drought. It'd make our water more reliable. The point that we were attempting to make here is that it doesn't get you any additional water. It does make it maybe even substantially more reliable, but it doesn't get you additional gallons.
But you're assuming then that, all the aquifers intermingle.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm just assuming what the Headwaters will have on their books right now. And so until they tell me something different, that they explain it as a layer cake until, as soon as they start slicing the cake this way instead of this way, we're gonna get 80,000 gallons per surface acre.
Right.
Jeff, anything?
No, sir.
Delane?
One thing about the Ellenberger below it, how far along are the engineers in determining if it's a go? Should we try this like we did with the Ellenberger, which was, kind of a guess even when we did that one, but they were right, like you said. So I was just curious. They've been working on this now for a while, haven't they, as far as identifying possibly?
You talk too much about that, I can answer unless you.
Go, I haven't.
Okay. So there hasn't been anything, to prove that out, you gotta drill a well. And nobody's drilled a well since they've been talking about this. This was kind of talked about, or brought to me at least kind of midsummer, last summer. They said, man, we think there's water even down below the Ellenberger.
Well, they drilled the hole down below the Ellenberger.
Over on the one out of town or the one in town?
Well, I can't tell you where it is, but I've been to the Headwaters and they said that they found a lot of water at 3 or 4 different levels below the Ellenberger. Now, that still has to be proved with a secondary well, and to help see what the drawdown is and, how that levels. But they found, and they felt like it was a substantial, it was just a test well, and, it didn't really mean, but the signs were good, that there was a lot of water and that it was clean water. It wasn't, because some of the water can be.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
So at the Legion well, they drilled that one down to 1,400 feet, and it's hard to tell, even by their own standards, it's hard to tell after you drill through a volume of water, if you have more water, how much more is it?
Mm-hmm.
And so what they did over there is they drilled down to, and it's been like 3 years ago, these numbers are gonna be kind of rough, 705 feet, I think it was, and they blinded that off, and then they drilled down to 1,400 feet, and at that particular well, they said there was no more substantial water down there. And that's when they come back in, they actually sealed off the bottom of that hole. I think at 800 feet, they sealed everything down off, they filled it full of concrete, said, there's nothing down there below that. We're gonna produce this upper level. Now, that's not to say that on the one that's outside of town in the remote well field, the same one that we talked about here, they kind of dual completed inadvertently. They were trying to get to the Ellenberger. There was a cave where the Ellenberger and the Hickory meet. They had a very hard time blinding that off to where they couldn't get, there was actually commingling there. And so they had to actually hire another driller to come back in and seal off the Hickory and then produce the Ellenberger. He was able to do that, and then they went down past the Ellenberger. And I don't know how deep they went. They haven't completed all their logging on that well yet. And I don't know all those numbers.
No, I think that must be the well that I'm thinking of, that at the time I talked to him, and it's been a couple months ago or maybe longer, that they hadn't completed the logging yet, but
They still haven't completed it. It's a well that I watch pretty closely, and it's still not done. It's been going on for 1.5 years now. They've had one issue after another.
Right.
Even if we knew tomorrow it's gonna produce water, we could only pull 80,000 gallons. Can you hear me? Okay, because that's the thing about, we want additional water.
Well, on a remote well field, you would get that, but you would have to lease all that additional property. And that's where that big expense was associated with all that. Well, this turns out that the surface acres here in Kirk County or Gillespie County, wherever you look for it, they're expensive. And people don't want to give up their surface water or their groundwater rights because they can't build homes on it. After that, it's just a piece of land.
Any questions?
Thank you.
further? I have a question or two. In 2018, the long-range water supply plan, under which I assume we're continuing to work, specifically calls for a well field, a remote well field. That's been evaluated here, and it comes out to be, I guess, the second highest cost acre feet per year. Also has the highest yield, newest supply. Are we abandoning the 2018 plan, or are we still pursuing the 2018 plan?
This is following the 2018 plan. This is more definition than what we had then. We're a few years ahead, in advance of the 2018 plan. We're saying, okay, if we want to take down another project, council, which one would y'all have us pursue? And these four have come to the surface of determine what is the most reliable, best available, cheapest water we can find. And these were the four that we pulled out that we wanted more detail on. And that's when we engaged HDR to help us kind of run these numbers, help us understand what kind of our costs we're looking at.
And HDR helped us devise the 2018 plan.
Yes, sir. They drafted.
I think the difference in projected cost on the remote well field has significantly increased since 2018. Is that correct? Significantly increased.
At that time, we hadn't located a remote well field. We were just saying, we didn't know how much we needed, or we didn't know where the well field was gonna be. We also considered dumping it into the Guadalupe River and using the bed and banks, because we thought it was gonna probably be out in West Kirk County. Dump it in there and pull it out of our water treatment plant and treat it again. There's a whole bunch of options. It was a higher level planning effort than what we've drilled down into here. Since then, we've found this, Headwaters has drilled this well north of town. They've given us some more data that they have. Like Mr. McKinney was telling us, we know more. And so now we're able to dial back in and find out real, and costs have gone up substantially since 2018 too. So these are today's costs.
So the remote well field, if we were, someone gave us $70 million to get started on a remote well field. Two of the problems are the permitting, but also getting the water rights. And you're telling me it's virtually impossible to get those water rights in contiguous water right field.
Well, if people are giving you $70 million, nothing's impossible. I mean, it's all about dollars. You're gonna have to buy them. They won't give them to you.
I'm not trying to be flippant. What I'm trying to find out is, does the 2018 plan need to be revised or shelved or what? Because if this is in the 2018 plan, and it's substantially more expensive than it was in 2018, and the idea that we can even get the water rights is remote, perhaps we need to revise the 2018 plan.
So I think the 2018 plan mentioned this as an option, not that it was cemented that this is what we were gonna do.
Actually,
It was one of the options.
it was one of the recommended options.
Well, one of the options, right.
Correct.
Not, so we don't know if we have to change anything
No.
because it was an option.
But it looks like it's off the table. It's wait,
Well,
$70 million bucks.
Yes, that does sound like that. I agree.
The second thing is on the indirect potable reuse. On the north route, it looks like the discharge point would be Elm Creek Park. So that would meander down Elm Creek Park and enter the Guadalupe River just upstream from Billy Jean's restaurant. Is that correct? That is not really a flowing stream. It flows when you have a lot of rain. For the most part, it's a dry creek bed. If it became our discharge point, would it be a flowing stream or would it be a dry creek bed?
Well, This, if we decide this is an option, we would look at what council's direction is. Do we really want it to flow through Elm Creek Park? That was my solution, because I like flowing water in a city. I think it's pretty when you walk next to a park. We could take it all the way to the Guadalupe River. In this particular scenario, we discharged it in Elm Creek, kind of at the top of that park, had it run all the way down past Billy Jean's and dump into the river. You know, as we develop that plan and determine what we're gonna do, then we would answer that particular question. To answer the one, would it always be flowing? That's open for discussion as well. I mean, we discharge out of our wastewater plant, we have to discharge about 200,000 gallons a day to meet our permit. So we would probably have to discharge a little bit there and a little bit at our other plant. How much we discharge would be up to us. The state doesn't require you to say you have to put 500,000 gallons a day in this discharge point or that discharge. We have to release a little bit because that's the end of our treatment process. Our little bit, what we have established as little bit is about 200,000 gallons a day.
Okay, so if this was the choice that the council made, would there be a flowing stream there mostly or not a flowing stream there mostly?
Ideally, I would like to make it a flowing stream. But there's times that we don't discharge very much reuse water. We capture as much as we can, and at that time it would go dry.
Okay. As you know, there are demands upon our reuse water. There are new demands now north of the city on our reuse water. After those demands are met, and after our contracted demands are met, how much is left really to discharge in Elm Creek Park?
Well, currently, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think we've signed anything with the people north of the city yet.
Right.
We need to understand what their ask is and how they're going to, how big a pond they're gonna build and how they're gonna treat it and get it to them and all these other things. So I'll just talk about our current customers.
Right.
And currently, we reserved, when we built the reuse pond out there at the water treatment plant, we reserved a volume of water for the city of Kerrville to use for potable water. That was the 500,000 gallons a day. So that's kind of that's the number we used here to back into to say, okay, and that's part of the reason it's so inexpensive compared to the other ones, is some of this work has already been thought of, and it never was thought to be brought up to there. It was gonna be a direct potable plant. But we already have some of those costs incurred, and we always have some of the water available to us.
So am I understanding you to say that we have reserved 500 million gallons for city use? Does that impact the other commitments we've made to golf courses and to the other customers using that reuse water?
No, sir, it was intentionally left behind as potable water at that facility during, I can get into a whole lot of detail if you want, but it's gonna take a little while.
No, what I want to know is, are we overcommitted on our reuse water already?
Currently, no. And we're setting the one up north of town where they only get to use, we sell them reuse water during the cold months. If it comes out, and maybe this is not the right place to discuss it, but during the colder months, we would sell them reuse water while we reserve all of our other customers during the warm months, because we have water during the cold months. We don't have any more to allocate during the warm months.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but we've just gotten this report. We got it blind, basically. We've heard the suggestions, we've seen the comparisons. But it certainly seems to me, and I'm one voice on this council, that the 2018 plan needs a strong revision, and perhaps these choices are that revision.
These are those revisions.
But the remote well field, unless someone won the lottery, we're not going to be for that remote well field.
That's correct, and that's what this demonstrates.
So even with Whiskey Springs coming on, we still have to discharge at least 200,000 gallons. Doesn't really matter.
We have to discharge something, but yes, sir.
Or whatever, but there's a certain
Yes, sir.
amount that we have to, no matter what other subdivisions are in.
The way our permit is written, as the water leaves our wastewater treatment plant, it goes through a cascade system where it gets irrigated and last chemicals are taken out of the process. And so when it leaves that cascade is where it drops into the creek. So that point where it drops into the creek is the end of our treatment process. So we have to run enough through there to capture sample every day to send it to TCEQ to verify we have met our criteria.
And that's in the third creek, correct?
Yes, sir.
So what we would be basically doing is transferring some of that discharge in Third Creek to what is called Elm Creek, but has always been a dry creek.
That's correct.
I'm just trying to understand. You have something?
I can clarify Whiskey Springs just a little bit. So in the contract, we give them 2 years to get up and running, using that 500,000 gallon allotment that is reserved for the council, and then 2 additional years to get set up. And after that point, that initial period is done, and that 500,000 gallons reverts back to y'all, to us, to the city. And then as we grow, what we said is that you could get no more than 50% of new growth. So Wind Ridge gets added on, and it's 490 new homes, and they produce X number of waste. They would have right of first refusal on 50% of that new, and then that also has a limit and a total gallons per year that they would be able to account themselves for. So basically, they would start reducing their reliance on ours over time, because their own development, creating their own reuse. That helps.
So the question really is, have we overcommitted our supply? Is
No, sir.
that also what y'all are saying?
That's correct.
That's what the engineer's saying? Thank you.
That's what people are asking, so.
I think it's an interesting idea to discharge at Elm Creek, I do. However, the property owners along that route, that would be something new for them.
So let me,
Also, the road connecting Harper Road to Methodist Encampment has been torn up 15 times already, so they're tearing it up again today. They're repairing a tear up today. There's a limit to people's patience with Jackson being torn up. Go ahead, please.
I think I understand the question. You've probably had people come to you and say, the city of Kerrville's not willing to sell me any more reuse water because they're overcommitted. And that is true during that 3-month window. We're not overcommitted, we're committed to all we can allow.
Gotcha, and that 3-month period is the hardest.
That 3-month period, and that's what we told these guys, there's no more water, the well is dry. That's when we started thinking of, if you build your own pond and we fill it over the winter time, now we have water, we can fill it during those 3 months. But during the summer months, I got nothing to give you. So if you're getting that report out in the public, that's right. We can't do anything else in the summertime. But if you want to build a pond that'll hold all your whole year supply, and I fill it over December, January, and February, I can do that. I just can't get it to you in the middle of summer. So that may be the rub that you're hearing.
You and I have had that discussion, Stuart,
Yes, sir.
with others, because there's another facility here in town that wanted to buy more water, and it's not available. And then I also understand the 500,000 that we're holding in reserve just for worst case scenario or something like this that comes up, so.
Any other comments or questions? I appreciate the report, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask before you slam the gavel?
I'm hitting it.
I don't need a whole, is there any direction y'all would like to give us on which one of these scenarios y'all would like, or I can bring it back to another workshop, or I can bring it to a council meeting? Is there one that y'all say, hey, I'd like to see a project move forward with X, Y, or Z?
We're not really, I don't know that we're allowed to, we can give you a consensus, but we can't take a
That's all
vote.
I would like, sir.
Obviously, the one that seems to be the most cost-effective and taps into a supply that will grow over time is the indirect potable reuse on the north route,
The north route to Elm Creek, right?
correct?
Yeah.
Very good, thank you, sir.
Is there a kind of consensus with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, council, real quick too, and Stuart can probably touch on this. One of the reasons we also wanted to bring up the local well, even though it wouldn't generate new water, but could you kind of speak to the capacity that we had during the flood when the surface treatment plant was shut down, and a local well potentially could add another redundancy with that?
So the local, there's an opportunity here to kind of follow two tracks if you want. We could do the Elm Creek one, all the permitting, it's probably a year's worth of process to get that all in place, get the plans done. If council would like, we can also look at as a well option. The problem, I don't know if it's really a problem, when the water treatment plant was offline for a month, just because we're so used to having a really robust system, we got nervous. We were like, hey, we're just on wells. All other cities just run on wells. But when we did it, we were like, hey, we don't have anything in our hip pocket in case one of these wells goes down, makes us a little nervous.
Yeah.
And they're older pumps and stuff because we don't use them a whole lot.
Right.
And so we did talk about adding another well to the system, so that would make sense for us. It kind of firms up our yield. It makes us feel good, makes us really feel like we have a good source of water and reliable. And so that was what we were talking about at that time as well.
I don't think I'd be opposed to hearing more about that.
I would
Yeah,
love
I
to
think
know
that's a
the
good
Wow.
idea.
numbers
Okay.
and,
So we can run it, do both of them, because the permitting is, there's gonna be a window in there. It's gonna take a while to get through TCQ, and then there's some engineering that goes with it. We could run them together.
Okay.
You can,
You could drill at Elm Creek Park. All right, what's next?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Y'all are welcome to hang around for the rest of it, and like, it's gonna be kind of short.
To be.
It's gonna be really short.
or not to be.
Wait for someone to do Shakespeare on.
show up for me.
So our consultant is not here today, and we gave him all the time we're going to be able to give him. So I'm going to run you through a little bit of this presentation, though, and do my best. I'm a high-level kind of guy, and this is a detailed presentation that I didn't write, and so bear with me. There's going to be some questions here that I'll have to go home and kind of, or go back and look at. And if you want, we can actually have them come back at a later date and give more of a full-scale presentation. So in 2019, the city adopted or actually went out for a stormwater master plan, and we identified about $10 to $12 million worth of projects that needed to be done in the city on our stormwater front. We didn't have any fee set up for that. So that council actually adopted or agreed to include that in a bond. We packaged it with a street bond. It was about a $10 million bond, $12 million bond. $8 million of it was for streets and $2 million of it was for drainage. The drainage channel, we were able to fix Take It Easy drain, some other small drainage deals. And as part of that stormwater study, we were like, we need to implement a fee just so we can build a war chest for some of these projects. And so we implemented a straight line fee of $1. I'll get into that in the presentation in just a minute. But we implemented a fee kind of help us cover the cost of implementing a fee. I mean, it was so low, it was like, okay, hopefully we can afford an engineer to help us identify how do we charge this fee. The state has some requirements for implementing these fees and making it even for everybody. So what we're going to walk through here today is a brief presentation of 3 different scenarios. Those 3 scenarios are going to be to cover the remainder of the work that needs to happen on our stormwater prevention master plan. And so that has about $8 million worth of projects left on it. Each one of these 3 scenarios is designed in a way that it will cover those fees with debt service. So we'll go out for a bond, and these fees will pay that bond back, and we'll be able to do these projects. And there'll be 3 of them. One's a flat rate fee. One is a flat rate based on ERU. You'll hear that a lot in this presentation. Equivalent residency unit. And the last one is a tiered rate. And I'll get into more of that here in just a minute. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is towards the end of the presentation.
Stuart, would you rather do this another time?
Yes, but I want to give you enough to where you have a minute to think about it, since I have a few more minutes of your time, and that'll give you a feel for. I might be getting the shepherd's hook.
No, but Mayor and Council, we definitely want to get this information to y'all. We want it to be accurate. What we can do is we'll send y'all the presentation, so that way y'all can kind of look through it and have a whole bunch of questions. We'll get them to come back at a later date. I think the short of the long is, This came to y'all, obviously, in 2019 with the Stormwater Master Plan. We started looking at the stormwater fees beginning of this year, if not late last year, and this is kind of that end result. So we have a little bit of time, but it's definitely important on some new revenue streams. But really, whatever council wants to do, we can do it.
Well, you piqued my interest. We were talking about it earlier today about how much of an increase and what the fee would be, and now I'm curious. I mean, is there a page 15 we can just go to?
I can run through it, it'll be real high level, and
Okay.
so.
Probably all we can handle anyway.
I try to watch my time too. Okay, so this is currently how we're funding these projects. Out of Public Works, there's an admin department and street department. About 5% of those divisions right now is what's going towards stormwater cost. As we develop this fee, we're going to pay back the general fund, or those two departments, for those fees out of what we're proposing this new fee to cover. We're looking at some debt service here, how that's going to shake out over the next few years. You can see that on the top capital. We're going out for two sets of debt. One would be in 2028, or we're going to go out for it in 2027, and we'll start payments in 2028, you see there. And then the second set, we go out in 2030, and we start our payments in 2031. There again, I'm not going to go through a whole bunch of detail here, because I won't be able to answer all of your questions. These are the projects we've already completed with that first round of bonds that the city sold. And so this is our standard operating procedure. This is what we've done in the past, is we go out for bonds and then we pay them down over time. The difference is this came out of the general fund. We feel like this particular set of projects shouldn't compete with everything in the general fund. In my opinion, it ought to be set up like a utility. It's kind of a user fee. If you have a big house, or if you have a big development or a big apartment complex or a grocery store or what have you, you need a higher fee because you're using the system more. So here's the projected projects that we have. The first two up there, the Kroc Center. If you have seen the water come out behind the Kroc Center, it flows down past Hayes Street, makes it down to about HEB. Some of that water makes it into the HEB drain. Some of it goes towards all the places I know are food places, Chicken Express down that street, before it gets captured in a stormwater drain. We'd actually relocate that water and have it come down Pascal Drive, and it gets into a storm drain over there by Doyle Center. Pretty close to the Doyle Centers where we would dump, and then it would be in a natural flow water. That's about a $7 million project to get that off the streets. Well worth it, because it's probably ruining that many dollars worth of streets. So, but here's the projects that we're looking at funding to cover these fees would cover. Capital costs. These are the costs that we just talked about on the debt service. There again, let's just talk about the fees. Scenario one is where we're at right now. It's a current on the very far left side. The residential fee is, and we just pulled these numbers out of the air. This is the money that we put aside. We asked council, and council approved it for every one of our ratepayers as a fee to kind of to have enough money to implement all this work that we need to do to set up a stormwater fee. All residents pay $1. It goes to the utility bill. Multi-user group meters, which are apartment complexes effectively, are $2, and anything commercial is $3. Just a flat rate across the board. There's no impervious cover calculation or anything like that. Okay, let's just go. So here's what that would look like if we used the flat rate fee and no impervious cover again. We're just going to run it through FY26. That goes up for all residents. It goes from $1 to $2.72, and you can see it growing as it goes out there to 2030 to cover our cost. Multi-unit does the same thing. It starts at $2. In 2026, it would be $5.41, so it'll be a little bit more than double, and then it would work up to $14.92 out in 2030. These fees are set in a way to cover all of those projects. If we want to slow that progression down and not have them all done in 10-year period, then we can smooth these fees over a longer period of time. But we needed to compare apples to apples so we can see the different fee structure. This is a straight line fee, set fee. So scenario 2 does an impervious area calculation. So what we did here is we said, what's the average size impervious cover that you use, or that residences are in Kerrville? And they actually got on our GIS, looked at all of the different areas, looked at the house, the rooftops, and also the driveways of most residences in Kerrville, and they came out with an equivalent residency unit of 4,876 square feet. So they said this is on average how big a house is, or how big the impervious cover of a house is in Kerrville. And they said, okay, so if we use that as our point, what do we have to do to set a fee that's still flat? Let me see, let me go to the next slide. So they're set up a fee that's related right back to the ERU. Said for every ERU, this is how much you would need to pay to cover your stormwater prevention fee. And that's at a $2. So right now the residential's at $1. We'll go back to where we are currently. It'd go up to $2 per ERU. So this isn't, for this particular scenario, every residence is equal to the $2. Every multi-unit is a $2 fee, but that's per ERU. So if you are an apartment complex and you have 10 ERUs, you're basically the size of 10 homes, you're going to pay $20 instead of $2. And so it's an escalator on how many ERUs how big you are. Okay, and same thing with commercial. And so if you are a big outfit, maybe a box store or a grocery store or a mall or something like that, you might have 10 or 15 ERUs, or if you're a small commercial business, you may be 2. And so it's all about your size. Okay, so scenario 3, that's in scenario 2. Scenario 3 is very similar to scenario 2, but it breaks the residential rate or sizes down to, if you have a smaller house, and we're kind of helping those people that have smaller houses pay less because they pay 75% of an ERU because they're a smaller footprint. That's tier 1. Tier 2 is an average size home. They're paying the same thing, the $2 for those that between 2,351 square feet at 4,877 square feet. Those would be the residential 2. And then if you have a big home, then you pay 125% of an ERU, which is slightly more than the tier 2. So all of those kind of dollar out at the end of the day to equal the same percentage as the previous slide, but it's a tiered structure depending on the size of your home. Multi-unit and commercial are the same as the tier 2. So with that generates the money, the dollars up there. The tier 1 is the first one up there. When you look at 2026, is $1.50 instead of $2. Tier 2 is $2, and tier 3 is $2.50. The multifamily and commercial are still $2 per ERU. So we'll get down to the part where everybody's interested. How does this look for everybody else? This is allocating it back to each of those departments. This is how much each one of those scenarios generates down there in the bottom. And so we're just showing here what we've done now. If you look under the lower part of the slide, it talks about the current rate. That's how much we generate for the residential, $97,920. Under our new strategy, it'd be $182,000 for strategy 1. For strategy 2, it's $139,000, and for strategy 3, it's also $139,000 because those are the same type rate structures. At the total over there, you will see they end up at the same number for all 3 strategies. It's just how do we get there? So how do we compare to other cities, you may be asking yourself, because that's always important to where other cities are on their stormwater fees. So for residential impact, you can see Kerrville. I got them to color code them so we can tell. We're looking at all 3 of those different scenarios that we just had a minute ago. Kerrville, the current rate is $1. That's the lowest one out of everybody from Bernie, Kyle, Killeen, Georgetown, Round Rock, Cibolo. Nobody else is at $1 right now. And this is for residential 1 ERU. What we're proposing is the either $2 or $2.7. Still substantially under the next lowest, Bernie, which is their tier 2, is $4. So they're almost double what we're asking. This is a size, if you were a commercial business, it gets a little bit more, right? But still, every one of those different scenarios there. So currently we're at $3 flat rate. Kyle is the only one that's cheaper than us, and I'm assuming they did the same thing we did and just had a fee of something to generate some money. But as you look at these costs and you're like, okay, we need to really have a true impact or a stormwater fee, you look at Kyle and Bernie, Round Rock, Georgetown, Fredericksburg's up there at 50. We're asking for 8 in worst case scenario. So this would be a medium-sized building, 20,000 square feet, a church, medium commercial size. They would pay a 7, or depending on what scenario we select, anywhere from $11.90 a month down to, if we stayed with what we have, it's $3 a month for the stormwater fee. As you can see, as we get bigger and bigger, these department stores are going to get more and more because they have a lot bigger impact. If you look at the mall or maybe a Gibson's or something big, Walmart, they may have as much impervious cover as 20, 30 homes, with including their parking lot. So their fee gets substantially higher. Here's a larger building like a bank, maybe 60,000 square feet, $27 a month. If we stayed with what we currently have, it's $3 a month. So we'd be moving up from $3 to $27. And this is just to fund these stormwater projects. A little bigger, and we're almost out of slides, so just bear with me just a few more minutes here. The Superstore, big grocery store, 700,000 square feet. They may be paying $200, $300 a month. But if you look at comparison, that's a lot, right? I mean, nobody is saying that isn't a lot of money. But as we compare to other cities that have these stormwater fees, we're still half of the next lowest city. And there again, it takes all of that pressure off of the general fund and puts it on kind of a utility structure that this marries with better than taking it against all the general fund money. So with that, sorry, kind of muddled through some of that. There's a lot better in-depth conversation to be had there, but that'll kind of give you, at least as you're reviewing this, the next time you review it, you kind of get the flow of it.
You email this to us?
Yes, sir. I think it went out, but I will make sure you have a copy.
Doesn't matter.
I will email it to you. Yes, sir.
All right. Any questions on stormwater fee?
You did great.
Yeah,
Bob,
thank
yeah.
you.
It's like your own presentation.
Confident in water. Stormwater is a little bit iffy, so.
Any questions? All right, we have an item under executive session. We will need a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make a motion that we go into executive session under sections 551.071 and 551.072.
Second.
Motion's been made in second. Any discussion? All in favor, vote. And we'll move into executive session upstairs.
He's walking in the door.